Welcome back. Today, with the help of Red Robot, we're going to be dissecting a video on the subject of veganism and feminism. Red Robot is someone I was supposed to have collaborated with about 7 or 8, 9, 10... a while ago. But the video that he had sent to me responding to the video we are going to be addressing was on a computer that died. It was not easy to get it back. Now, as I mentioned, the subject is feminism and veganism, the conflating of ideologies. That is the key point I want to focus on today. Not responding to points about veganism, mostly because the last time I did that, I got absolutely reamed by Jack Green. You should all go subscribe to him, by the way. Since he's done that video, he and I have spoken on quite a number of occasions. He is actually quite a nice guy.
The correlation between feminism and veganism is a subject that has been highlighted many times before. The systematic oppression of the female form has been well documented in almost every area of animal exploitation and even into the pet trade.
Is this cock gobbler going to equate female animals with female humans?
I'm going to have to be very, very careful how I respond to you. I'm going to be upfront and state quite clearly I am not going to use bacon as an answer or argument. Now, to address your point about the correlation between feminism and veganism with regards to women's rights and animal rights, while feminism once did in fact have a purpose, it no longer does within the West. There are plenty of countries that are not as developed as the West that do in fact require women's rights, and in fact in some places, quite a lot of places, men's rights too, depending on the political or religious system in place. But I know that's not what you're trying to point out this early on. You're instead pointing out that animals, like women, should be given equality. Very difficult to do, and it does bring up obvious arguments that I've seen happen many times in vegan debates, I believe about moral objectivity. I in fact spent about an hour talking to a vegan when Cognitive Thought was debating Ask Yourself, and they went around and round and around and around and around that particular subject. For me, I think if you're going to line women's rights up with that of animals' rights, when we are the dominant species on the planet, and considering historical factors, for example, historically women were oppressed, but women are not anymore, and historically whether or not we did need to eat meat in the past as to whether or not we do now, I think it is a poor position to argue from.
Female animals have their bodies abused and their sexual organs taken advantage of as if they are mere commodities. To be a feminist but to pay for the exploitation of the female body purely because it belongs to a species that is not your own is oppressive in itself and goes against the very foundations of feminism, which is advocacy for female rights.
The advocacy for women's rights. We could play semantics all day, but feminism advocates for human, female, human, women's rights.
Considering that most male animals are castrated or literally just have their sexual organs removed completely. Oh, that explains this little weasel. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry they had to take you and get you spayed and neutered. You poor little fuck.
Yeah, just because I'm going to be nice doesn't mean I'm going to tell Red Robot to be.
But there is another element to this that's not just about non-human animal oppression, but human oppression as well. Studies have emerged over recent years that show a clear correlation between slaughterhouses and increased crime rates.
See, you say studies, plural, but I followed your links, and they reference one book and one study. So the only one that's actually any kind of, verifiable study is the one. Because all the other articles just refer to that book or that study. And I read that study. I kind of wish I hadn't, and it's not as clear as you would think. We'll get to that in a minute. Go on with your bad self.
It is well known that children who abuse animals at a young age grow up to be bullies, and interestingly enough, some of the most violent criminals in human history began by hurting animals.
Okay. I see where you're going with this, but there's a problem. Children who routinely abuse animals are a sign that they might be a psychopath. The act of abusing animals does not make them a psychopath. It's a warning sign. You have gotten the cart before the horse almost directly.
Ironically, as a society, we denounce anyone who commits any form of animal cruelty, as we see it as a horrific crime. yet we've somehow managed to convince ourselves that animal cruelty that takes place in the form of full-time employment is not only acceptable, but comes without consequence.
See, the thing you're messing up is that there is a difference between animal cruelty and animal processing.
And this is where I'm going to have to stop you, Red. You see, the point he is making is actually not relevant to the wider point that I want to discuss. So he has actually managed to derail the discussion by bringing morals into it, and semantics. One could argue all day long about whether or not it is animal processing or animal cruelty, but then you have to determine what cruelty is, and that brings up morals. An argument I have seen on many occasions in vegan versus non-vegan debates. For the lengthiest ones, I recommend going to the 2 cognitive thought related debates in the description, as quite a lot of time was spent on moral objectivity, or is it subjectivity? Whatever. Morals.
Obviously, this contradiction is not just wrong, it's incredibly dangerous. Due to the nature of their employment, slaughterhouse workers have higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse, as well as social withdrawal and severe anxiety.
The study that you linked and the book that you linked, both of those have poor correlations. And what's really interesting, and we'll get into this in a bit, but one of the things that's really interesting about it is a lot of the supposed problems with the industry are compared to other similar industries. The study acts as though there's a strong correlation, but when you read their actual numbers, which by the way are presented this way, tilted for some fucking reason, but when you actually turn them this way and look at them so you view them properly, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. I mean, really? Honestly, come on!
Unsurprisingly, slaughterhouse workers have some of the highest rates of mental health problems in any profession.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find any good sources for this, but what I could find was that for PTSD, production jobs ranked far below things like police officers, military, firefighters, emergency medical, other healthcare. I mean, just basic healthcare of human beings is more traumatic, apparently, than meatpacking. Also, depression apparently is very high in manufacturing and production jobs anyway, and I can relate to that because it is kind of it's a tough job, let's just put it that way.
And in fact, more slaughterhouse workers are now being treated for PTSD as researchers are starting to understand the dire consequences of them emotionally detaching from slaughtering animals.
You have yet to bring up oppression of animals and oppression of humans or women, so I'm going to continue to skip ahead until you actually get to the point that is relevant.
Potentially even more alarming still is the rise in violent crimes, including domestic abuse, that are also associated with slaughterhouses. In fact, in 2014, a study showed that areas surrounding an average-sized slaughterhouse had an increase of 166% in rape arrests. This is obviously hugely alarming and is an issue that should not only disturb vegans but non-vegans as well. And it really just goes to show how veganism is not just a movement for animal rights but also for human rights.
So we are now closer to getting to the points that are relevant to the conflation of feminism and veganism, something which I am very much interested in talking about. And for those who are listening and curious as to why I'm not addressing the comments he made about rape statistics, the sources he cites in his video description are not good enough. I'm not going to spend what limited time I have to go through additional sources to try and back up his claim or disprove it because it is not relevant.
But these kind of findings can hardly be deemed surprising. The institutionalization of mass violence and slaughter was always going to have detrimental impacts on those that partake in the actual killing.
You are actually stupid. I'm just gonna lay this out. You're an idiot, or you're just doing propaganda. People have been slaughtering their own animals and killing animals as a matter of course in hunting since we began. Are you arguing that the people whose job it is to do these things for the rest of us become worse people as a result?
But there again, these findings don't necessarily mean that slaughterhouse workers are bad people. After all, they again are just victims of a system that oppresses the vulnerable. Now that doesn't mean they should be excused for their crimes, because absolutely they should be held accountable. But we can't put all fault on their shoulders. After all, it's equally the fault of the animal agriculture industries and the consumers who buy the products and therefore create a demand.
And this brings up an interesting talking point, one I'm very interested to hear what people, if you in the comments do leave comments, think about this. Does the death of an animal at the hands of a human mean the same as the death of a human at the hands of another human? For the most part, as we determine our laws, the answer is no. As we are the top dogs, we built the society. But I'm interested to know what people think about the idea of considering killing an animal, a crime. What do you think, Red?
Animal processing is legal. It's not a crime, you fuckwit. And besides, even if you're going to go, oh, well, it's a crime against morality, we're omnivores. You know this. We are predators. We are quite literally the top of the food chain. We are the most dangerous predator on the planet, collectively.
These findings, however, lead to massive contradictions in the people that are campaigning for human rights. We have situations where people are fighting for the survivors of domestic abuse, while at the same time buying a product that perpetuates domestic abuse.
This being a sly reference to animal testing of products like makeup raises a lot of ethical questions about whether or not we should test products on animals to begin with, and of course medical research that goes on when testing certain medical products on animals as well. I personally am not huge on it. I have said it many times in my real life, and certainly with what I did at university, I made it quite clear I wanted nothing to do with it. But I also understand the necessity to conduct medical research with certain animals that possess genetic traits that are similar to our own, so as to find cures for diseases that we need cures for, because alternative medicines are not on par with scientific medicines, which of course can be debated by many people.
We have campaigners for rape survivors fueling an industry that allows rape to occur more frequently.
This is quite tricky, because now I've noticed you've attached heinous crimes with a process within farming. So for this one, this will be the artificial insemination of a cow for dairy or livestock, which you call rape. And earlier mentioned the process in which an animal is processed through an abattoir, you call it murder. That is debatable, and I'm more than happy for people to debate it. I'm not going to, because honestly, I get enough migraines as it is. But calling them rape, taking a human crime and attaching it to another species, is where I take issue, and it brings up many arguments about what rights animals should or should not have. It also brings up morals, it also brings up the argument of sentience, and I'm very much aware of this, which makes it so incredibly difficult to argue against you. I do not agree that these are, or should be labelled by anyone, a type of crime, because the majority of society still deems them right. And even though this debate was a train wreck, I'm going to play a small clip that featured on Friendage channel. That was a debate with Vegan Gains, Jack Green, Kraut and T, and Bering, where Kraut talks about this very part. Whether Kraut is right or wrong, this piece is relevant to this particular segment.
I'm not arguing whether or not it's legal. I'm not arguing whether or not it's socially acceptable. I'm talking about actual moral justification. You're trying to conflate these different things, and you're avoiding the root of the argument.
And how do we come to moral conclusions? How do we build the social structures and laws and regulations upon which we build our society? We build them through debate. We invite people who care about these things, who give a fuck about these things, and we debate them and we agree on them. And the thing with you is, the offer that you're making, by constantly asking, why do we need to find some kind of moral justification for slaughtering animals? Well, we don't have to, because it's accepted in society, because it is being done.
So slavery was at one point morally acceptable?
Yes, it was at one point morally acceptable.
No.
Slavery at one point.
So you're saying if it wasn't socially acceptable, like let's say there was meat completely reduced in society, and you were one of the lone few who went to the store to pick up meat, and everybody stared at you and made you feel fucking awkward, like you're a piece of shit, you'd still continue to do that?
No, because moral values, it wasn't just social pressure that made slavery acceptable, okay? And the reason why we abolished slavery is because we had a ethical and moral debate. In your case, you even had a fucking war over it, and we came to the conclusion that it wasn't ethical, that it wasn't morally okay. We had a debate about that. We had to justify. The thing is, you're not doing a debate. No. We had to justify the abolition of slavery. We had to come to the conclusion that every human being had the right to the same inherent unquestionable rights, the same unquestionable freedoms and liberties. You have to stand here and make the argument for why every animal supposedly has the right to these unquestionable freedoms and liberties.
And as such, you can't call yourself a feminist if you still buy animal products, because your money is directly supporting an industry that has been proven to increase dramatically the amount of violence on women.
Oh, okay, so it's a purity test. God damn it. Well, I'm sorry, you can call yourself a feminist if you want. You're just saying, well, no, true Scotsman in the reverse. It's a purity test. You're just an idiot. But look, the other thing that really irks me is that you talk about domestic abuse and rape and all that, and suddenly, oh, well, it's only really about women. Of course it's only about women. Fuck!
The number of times I've had feminists say no one feminist represents all of feminism, but then each one in turn then lists off what feminism is to them, as if somehow they and they alone are absolutely correct, is maddening.
We must begin to understand that our actions have far-reaching consequences, and we have to start to break down the boundaries of the hyper-separated state that seeks to make sure that we, the consumer, are separated from the slaughter of animals.
Is it me, or does this sound very tinfoil hat?
So many people fight for something without ever taking the time to critically look at whether or not their own actions perpetuate the system they are supposed to be fighting against.
Oddly enough, I saw this in a video recently. Unfortunately, I cannot remember whose video it was, so I can't link it or reference it. But there were comments about people who were anarchists, who would end up being a part of society as if nothing happened in their life before. It's like a phase. Much like people now, the young people who keep claiming they're socialist, who've gone out and spent lots of money on t-shirts saying they're a socialist, without seeing the irony in it.
See, here's the thing, at this point in the video, I suddenly realized what a hypocrite the guy is. Because if you look behind him, that is a Mac computer. Now, the last time I checked, he didn't build that. It's being built by little yellow people across the sea in shitty-ass conditions. But, of course, he's a progressive, so he has a Mac. Instead of a PC built in Taiwan by people who aren't working in a communist slave labor system. The irony is astounding.
Meat-eating environmentalists are a perfect example of this, as are feminists who continue to support an industry that not only exploits the female form, but desensitizes and normalizes violence and creates an environment in which domestic abuse, violence and rape appear more commonly.
Two things. One, your source doesn't prove that. And the other is, if you're going to go with this ideological purity test that feminists and environmentalists have to be non-meat eaters, I just think you're using this as, again, a guilt tactic to try and make people who feel that they're a part of progressive causes that they have to go all in with all of them all at once.
So what are your thoughts on this? Is it something that you've considered before, and do you agree what it is I'm trying to say? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it informative, and I'll see you next time. Namaste.
I thought it was shit vegan propaganda, and what the hell was this bowing thing? You're British! That's cultural appropriation, asshole! You can't be a progressive activist and steal things from other people's cultures.
And with that, Red Robot and I are done. I know a lot of you are going to be in the comments very critical of some of our perceptions with regards to the conflation of veganism and feminism. So now I'm going to state what I think. I think feminism has been tarnished and tainted beyond repair, and I think it is not good or wise to associate veganism with it. I think veganism can and possibly will become something that will be adopted by the majority of society one day. A long time away though. I do not believe we're anywhere near ready for it. Anyway, thank you all for listening.